As the new Jewish year begins, we are all facing a harsh reality that this year's beginning is very different from the one we experienced last year. It's as though we are living in a new world, a world rattled by the horrors of October 7th, a date now etched into our collective memory forever. On that dreadful day, Israel and the Jewish people were attacked, not just physically, but existentially. We have seen plenty of wars and terrorist atrocities aimed at Israel and Jews in the past, including wars against Egypt and Syria, 2 wars in Lebanon, several in Gaza, and 2 intifadas. But nothing compares to the savagery and trauma of October 7th and the outpouring of hatred and animosity against Jews and Israel that we have witnessed since. What makes it even worse, even as we grapple with the massacre of over 1,200 Israelis and the kidnapping of 251 innocents, 101 of whom are still in captivity, is the bitter realization that many global leaders and people from whom we might have expected sympathy have shockingly sided with the perpetrators. The rise in antisemitism is one thing, but the dismissal, trivialization, and even justification of such hate is deeply unsettling. Who can ever forget Harvard President Claudine Gay's tone-deaf words, "It depends on the context"? Reflecting on all this, it's hard not to feel a profound sense of failure as we remember the naive hopes of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur a year ago. We prayed, we yearned, we resolved to be better people, and all seemed to be going well as we looked ahead towards a new year. And yet, here we are, a year later, facing a world where our enemies are emboldened and the forces of good seem unable to overcome the threats from beyond our borders as well as those from within. We are vulnerable, perhaps more vulnerable than we have been for generations. But as challenging as all of this is, there is an important question we need to ask ourselves. How can this year be different? The answer, I believe, lies in our perspective. While there is much to be concerned about, focusing on the darkness alone will not help us. Instead, we must seek out the silver linings, no matter how faint they may seem, as the clouds of worry overwhelm us. I've learnt over the years that good things only grow from positivity. If we wallow in misery, we're doomed never to emerge from the past into a brighter future. We need a better year ahead and better times ahead, and that must begin with us looking for light amid the darkness. In the chaos of recent months, there have been many bright sparks that have illuminated the darkness, but one thing stood out more than any other: the incredible spirit of the Jewish people, and particularly the younger generation. And I believe that this is where Israel truly sets itself apart from the rest of the world and gives us a reason to be joyful. Let me explain. All over the world, we're witnessing a dramatic decline in people's willingness to defend their countries, specifically younger people. A decade ago, surveys showed that over 60% of people in countries across the globe said they would fight for their homeland. Today, that number has dropped to just 50%. To be clear, this means that half of the world's population would rather sit on the sidelines if war came knocking on their door, even if it meant that their country would lose the war. In the United States, it's even worse. Just 41% say they would join the military if necessary. And in Europe, the number is even lower, just 32%. This is not just an abstract statistic. It's playing out in real time. Since the Russian invasion of Ukraine in 2022, thousands of Russian soldiers have deserted the military, while thousands of Ukrainian men have fled the country to avoid conscription. It seems that even in the face of a real-life existential threat, the desire to fight for one's country has diminished significantly. But in Israel, it's the exact opposite. After the brutal Hamas attack on October 7th, Israel called up 360,000 reservists, nearly 4% of the population. And not only did local Israelis respond overwhelmingly, but so did many reservists living abroad. Within days, Israelis living in the US packed their bags and left their families behind as they headed back to Israel to defend their country and their people. El Al flights were jammed with reservists, and philanthropists took to chartering planes to fly reserve soldiers home to fight. This sense of duty and responsibility is not limited to people who have lived and experienced life and its challenges. Young Israelis, the so-called TikTok generation, have proven themselves to be anything but brainless zombies glued to their smartphones. They've risen to the challenge in ways that defy all stereotypes and every prediction. As the parent of a 22-year-old reserve soldier, I can tell you from personal experience how remarkable his generation is. Our son, Meir, along with his reservist peers, didn't wait for formal instructions after hearing the news of October 7th. They immediately put on uniforms and went to help in any way that they could. For days, they worked tirelessly, guarding, delivering supplies, and helping displaced families. In the weeks that followed, until they were given formal call-up papers, they continued to serve with the same determination and sense of purpose. As parents, we naturally worry, but we also feel immense pride. We know that the future of Israel and the Jewish people is safe in the hands of Meir's generation. It is for this reason that I don't believe our prayers were wasted last Rosh Hashanah. On the contrary, when we prayed for our children, our prayers were answered. Despite all the many challenges we face, we are privileged to have an emerging generation that embodies the spirit of resilience and patriotism, which was the hallmark of the founding generation of Israel, a spirit that is needed now more than ever. It is this spirit that should give us hope in the face of adversity. Over the past few weeks, we have begun to see, slowly, real signs of success against our enemies, victories that remind us of the strength and indomitability of the Jewish people. These triumphs are only possible because of the brave young men and women who are willing to fight for the survival of Israel and the Jewish people. So, while there are certainly problems still ahead, we are in good hands. As we move forward into the new year, let us not forget the power of prayer. With the evidence before our eyes of the next generation, we know that our prayers are heard and are effective. With that in mind, let us pray for Israel, for our brave soldiers, for the hostages still in captivity, and for the defeat of our evil enemies. With God's help, we will triumph, and perhaps this year we will see the ultimate redemption we've all been longing for. Am Yisrael Chai.